Good evening, everyone. What's going on, everybody? How you all doing? It is Wednesday night, and as we welcome you all to our Wednesday night review. I know some of you all are taking your time to log in. We want to welcome you all who are watching with us on Facebook or on YouTube. We are so excited for tonight. This is the grand finale. Here at the Mount Sinai Church of our Where Do We Go From Here discussion series. It has been an awesome time. We've had an awesome time every single Wednesday night for the last couple of weeks as we've talked to different civic and social leaders on where do we go from here. How do we continue to do the work? How do we continue to fight for justice? How do we continue to stay energized and involved in making our communities better? I am Pastor Corey Johnson once again, and I am so excited that you're here with us tonight. We first had a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Marcus Larivo, Dr. Alan Waller, and Pastor Danielle Pilgrim, who talked about how the church can get involved and lead in the fight for justice. And last week, we had an awesome time. With State Representative Chris Rabb, Councilman Dwayne Williamson, and an organizer, field organizer, Christopher Johnson. And now tonight, everybody listen, tonight, we saved our very best for last. Come on in here, everybody. If you're watching, why don't you hit that share button, because we've saved our very best for last. We have three awesome panelists, and we are so excited for this discussion as we talk to three powerful women who are helping change our communities and who are helping really just change our communities, our country, and our world. And so we are going to hop right in. We want to remind everybody that we'll be streaming tonight at 6:30 p.m. And we will also be together again for worship right here on Facebook Live and on YouTube on Saturday at 11:30 a.m. as we continue our core series on the core values of our church. Well, y'all, listen, I'm hyped, so I'm not even going to take any more time. I'm so excited. I am so excited to introduce our panelists and our guest tonight, y'all. Let's go. Let's get this thing started. First, I want to welcome someone that when I first got married, my wife told me about her. Morgan told me, she was like, listen, this sister is bad. She's brilliant, she's deep, and she's a leader. I'm so excited to welcome the founder of She Can Win. The founder of She Can Win. This is a movement. This is a movement that supports, educates, and invests and empowers in women who have a passion for civic leadership. I am so excited to welcome our first guest tonight, sister, friend, Jasmine Sessoms. How you doing, Jasmine?
Hey, Pastor Corey. How you feeling? Hi, everybody.
I'm excited. I'm hyped. Excited to have you. Next, we want to invite on our next panelist is a member of the Mount Sinai Church, and she serves as our health and wellness director. She has a background in public health, and she is working to make sure that people have access to the care and to the health care that they need. I am so excited to add on our second panelist, sister, Miss Ifeekam Ozonuwe. Ife, how are you?
Good. How are you?
So good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yes. And then last but not least, I want to introduce our final panelist, who is no stranger to the Mount Sinai Church and no stranger, of course, to the Trenton community. I'm so excited to invite Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, who serves in the U.S. House of Representatives representing the 12th Congressional District. Not only is we're excited about that, but also back in February before COVID, Congresswoman Watson Coleman received the very first Mount Sinai Church Black History Month Award. And so she is a friend of our congregation, and we praise God for her. Everybody, let's welcome Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman.
Hey, Pastor. Good to be here. Hello, everybody. It's good to be here with you too.
Yes, ma'am. Well, listen, I am excited. I'm just going to tell you all, we're going to jump right in. Listen, I know that the people are ready to hear and to learn. The reason why we did this, and we'll get started here. The reason why we did this series is because, as we all know, none of us can get away from this. There was a presidential election. Well, there was an election across America in early November, and we realized that before that election, we all saw the death of George Floyd, and we saw the many instances of police brutality. Not only did we see that, but we saw the effect that COVID-19 had, particularly on the African American community. Not only the virus, but also the recession and the economic downturn that as a result of it. And many people, for the first time, got involved, whether they marched, whether they got engaged, whether they began to talk to congressional leaders or local officials, or they voted. Many people voted for the first time, or they followed the election closely. And so we want to talk about is, where do we go from here? The election has passed us. The summer is over. We don't want to lose that fire. Tonight, we are led in this discussion by three powerful and active Black women. The first question that we want to kind of just delve right into, and I'm going to toss this right to you, Jasmine, if you can start us off. Jasmine, what are some of the issues that Black women are dealing with in particular that you're hearing about that are unique to Black women, that we as a community, that we as a church need to hear and give voice to?
So Black women, thank you, Pastor. Black women are not a monolith, right? There isn't just one issue that affect us, but there is a range of issues that are very specific to Black women. Healthcare, and I'm sure Ife will jump in even quicker, but specifically maternal health care. Black women are dying at an exponential rate after giving birth because of the care or the lack thereof that we are receiving. Right, that is a huge issue right now for She Can Win. So we have 5 pillars in environmental racism and justice, healthcare, poverty, workforce development. Because another thing is that women are normally nowadays the head of the household, right? And normally Black women are leading their households. We need living wages as Black women. Even as a gig worker, we need laws to protect us and our rights. So those are issues that are at the top of the things that She Can Win is advocating for, but there's so many. Education, equality, right? I live in PA where the system is just broken, especially in Philadelphia. Our educational system is broken. We need fair funding for our school systems, for the public school. That is not an issue that is specifically Black women, but it is a Black person's issue. And until we can begin to collectively move that dial and ball, and you ask, where do we go from here? We keep going. It doesn't matter who's in 1600 Black Lives Matter Avenue, right? Because I don't say the White House. It is the Black Lives Matter Avenue now. We need to continue to focus on local elections right here in our hometown. All politics are local right now. It's great that we got the clown in chief out, but we need to keep pushing on those local elections. We need to keep pushing that message of vote now, vote early, vote often, and vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask, Ife, if you could jump in here and kind of, if is there anything you want to share on that Jasmine brought up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, thank you so much, Jasmine. I think you made a really good point. I think maternal health definitely is a big issue right now. So I do with public health. And I think the thing that's really unique about public health is that it touches everything. So what we saw in this pandemic is when we have a virus, it affects jobs. It affects people's ability to move around. It then affected school system, children, being able to go to school. Then you have, who's going to watch the kids if they're not at school? So, again, I think these are issues that as a Black woman, these are things that are always and all going to be affected. One thing I'm really passionate about, Jasmine, that you brought up is education. I think in kind of my circles, one thing that comes up always is, what are we going to do to remove and reduce debt? Again, when we're talking about Black women being leaders in education right now, I think we are leading the pack when it comes to being multiple degreed. And so then we think, well, look at the debt that also then accompanies us. And then another issue that comes up often is also entrepreneurship in Black communities. So again, I think those are kind of the issues that come up in my circle as well. And yeah, I would like to see policy changes around those. And I think those are the issues that, again, as a Black woman, as a millennial, that we really need to be rallying around.
Representative Coleman, what are you hearing from constituents? What are you hearing? What are you seeing are some of the issues as it relates to our community, but with Black women in particular?
Well, I think the young sisters have spoken to every one of the issues. I think it made it clear that every issue is our issue, that we're concerned about justice and safety and security in our community for ourselves and for our children. We're concerned with housing insecurity, job insecurity, equal pay. We're concerned with having access to healthcare and having issues being dealt with that resulted in our disproportionate maternal mortality and infant mortality and morbidity. We need resources to go into ensuring that our issues are elevated, and our issues are the same issues as everybody else. We want clean housing, we want good jobs, we want decent neighborhoods, we want to be able to raise our families, we want to have wholesome relationships, and we want to be able to ensure that our children get educated and get globally competitive education supported by the federal government, irrespective of where they live. And so in the long run, every one of those issues, environmental issues, are very important because we tend to live a lot in urban centers. And so we're very concerned about the impact of the environment on health issues. Mental health issues, a big deal. We're finding that maybe exacerbated by COVID-19 and the social distancing and isolation and all, but mental health issues have been a big issue in the Black community and been a big issue with our children, but we've not dealt with it the way we need to, and we've not destigmatized it so that it's okay to talk about it and to refer people and to do the things that are necessary to ensure that our little 9-year-olds and 5-year-olds aren't thinking that suicide, for instance, is an alternative to what they're experiencing. So in the long term, and hopefully with the new administration, we're going to have people who are going to examine, debate, and put forth the priority social and other policies that we need in order to lift up all communities. But immediately, we need to crush the virus. Immediately, Black women need for their families to have access to testing and contact tracing and a vaccine. We need to ensure that there's stimulus money coming out, that extra $2,000 a month, whatever we can rustle. We're having a hard time rustling out of the Senate, money that will help to bridge the gap. Got to make sure that food is available to them, that children who've been typically fed through school programs and other programs, that they're getting food in their homes. And so in the very short run, we need to make sure that we're taking care of the business that will allow us to have the debate and the discussion about more long-term policies, from law enforcement to education to environment to healthcare. Every one of those issues are on the table for us.
Wow.
And at different levels, because as Jasmine said, we're not monolithic.
Yeah, I think that's so important, man. I'm learning so much. I think that's so important. You said that we're not a monolith, and that all of these issues are issues that Black people deal with, that we all want our children to be safe. We all want our children to go to school. You know, we all want to not get sick from this virus. We all want to be able to meet our basic needs. I'm going to throw this out there, and if whoever wants to answer, you all can take it from here. Just kind of jumping off that question a little bit. You know, there are some people, I talk to a lot of young people who over the course of this year became more vocal about their frustrations and their disillusionment with the entire political process. You know, there are people who don't mind saying, I don't vote. I don't see the use of it. I'm tired of I'm tired of politicians. Nothing changes, and they're frustrated. If you were talking to someone, and I'm going to throw this out there, who was like, you know, I'm tired of the whole system. I'm tired of the process. Can you kind of make the argument, and whoever wants to answer, y'all can take it, y'all can run with it, of why it is necessary not to become so disillusioned that you and so cynical that we disengage? You know, what would you say to someone who feels like disengaging and throwing up their hands and walking away from the whole thing? I'm gonna throw that out there. Whoever wants to take it, y'all can run with it.
So I can start the conversation, but I'm sure my sisters can add to it. First of all, I think that we have failed educationally, that we don't really have an understanding of civics and history, that we don't understand from whence we came. We came from slavery, where we had no rights. We went through Reconstruction, where we had all kinds of rights. Then we went from fighting to hold on to those rights because folks didn't want us to have position and power and businesses, et cetera. And then we went through Jim Crow. We went through where you couldn't vote and you couldn't go places and you couldn't share in any opportunities. And then we went through the civil rights movements where we had to fight for equal employment opportunity and the right to vote. And then we elected a Black president and a Black vice president. So it is not true that it is not important to be engaged. And it is not true that we haven't seen changes if we look back from whence we've come. I get it that things maybe have not happened for everybody. I get it that we've had problems with the retraction of programs that were helpful in lifting everybody. Some people are discouraged because they haven't worked in years and can't get access to work and can't get access to training, can't go to school, and because those programs have been diminished, because politicians have not responded, because maybe our people haven't been voting. And so it's almost like cyclical. It's like, if you don't vote, you don't get attention. If you don't get attention, you don't vote. And so that cycle has to stop. It is true that everything has a political genesis, and everything starts at the very municipal level, closest to home. So it makes a difference who your mayor is and who your council members are, because they determine where they're going to pick up the trash first or the garbage first, what schools are they going to have open, what schools they're going to have closed. And then it's the state. They determine whether or not you're going to have the resources to do these things. And it's the federal government that feeds into what the states and the municipalities are going to do. So you vote because it is in your interest to have your issues addressed, and you are respected for the collective strength that your numbers represent. I always say to Black folks, we don't have a lot of money, but we got numbers. And ergo, those numbers, they elected Biden and Harris, president and vice president of the United States of America. Had it not been for us, we would have had Trump again.
That's a word. Okay, that's a whole word.
Can I just say this again? I just want to say this again. Everything has a political genesis. Come on, jump in there, Jazz.
That's a whole word, Congresswoman. I'm right there with you. First of all, nobody is crazy enough to come over to me and tell me that I don't vote, because I would literally drag you. How dare you disrespect our ancestors in that way? You understand? My grandmom was born in 1918. Yep. People couldn't vote back in 1918 yep. like her. I would never, ever, ever tell my grandmom I did not vote. How dare you, when people have died and struggled, fought, stood in line, were persecuted for our right to vote, especially as Black people, but even more so as a Black woman, where we have been ignored for so long in the political parties and have done the most work in these political parties. Not to vote is just not an option. I always tell young people, you like that Starbucks that is popping up downtown? Well, that's a zoning thing for city council to get that zoning bill in that commercial corridor. I make it very, very tangible for young people. You like your criminal record sealed after 7 years? Well, that was a state issue. You had you elected someone that brought that bill to the floor and then worked across the aisle to get that passed. You like the probation laws that we now have in Pennsylvania? Well, that's also a state issue. All elections matter, and you have to make it tangible and real for young people and connect it back to their day-to-day life of, look, that politician that we voted in 2012, he's doing this, 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 and this, and she's doing this, 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 and this, and that is how it affects your life. And look, if they're not doing the job, I always tell people, because she can win, not only do we train women to run for office, but we invest in them. We put you there, we can take you out. 110%, because we always have to let people know that, much like the Congresswoman, they are public servants. And the fact that she's taking her time tonight to speak to her constituents means the world. It means the world. And we need more elected officials like Congresswoman Coleman. You understand what I'm saying? And you have to make sure that your elected officials know. Don't let them off the hook. Call them, email them, go by their office in a COVID-friendly way, but let them know you are here to work for me. We elected you to this seat to represent the people. And once you stop representing the people, you can go, because we can put somebody else in the seat. And you have to make it real tangible. Your vote, it matters. But no one ever tells me they don't vote, because they know I will literally lose my mind.
Me too.
Okay, so let me hop in here. Okay, so I mean, I 1,000% agree with everything Congresswoman Coleman said and Jasmine said. One thing I will say from my experience, so I have a background in health policy. The one thing that made that experience so unique was you don't realize how everything you do is affected by the system. So, again, it's like, yeah, of course it is. But no, literally, like everything you do is a chess piece. And when you understand how to work the system, you can then evoke change. So when I have young people, and I guess I'm in that category too, but when I'm talking to other young people and, again, to Jasmine's point, you got to make it plain for them. You got to connect, okay, doing this action today is going to be impactful tomorrow. So I used to work with Urban League of Philadelphia. I used to work with the rising high school seniors. And so at that time, we were trying to encourage them, hey, if you want this car, you want this house, you got to make the decisions today to invest in that. So when you understand how to make the system work for you, which is voting, then you'll start to see those changes. And we absolutely have seen changes. So it's interesting when people argue the latter. Are the changes moving as quickly as we would like them? Maybe not, no. But to say that there's not changes, to say that your vote is not making a difference is not true. I think the other issue is, again, I think it's been brought up as well, is people don't understand the importance of voting for those other officials, those other offices, to, again, points that have already been made. Voting for your mayor, voting for your governor, that is just as important, if not more important, than voting for the president. Making sure the House and the Senate look the way we need it to, that is just as important as voting for the president. And that's when you understand how to play the game, then we can continue to push change forward.
Marijuana is a big issue right now. And you may be for it or you may be against it. But one thing we know about it, the result of the being tough on drugs has resulted in the over-incarceration of Black men and Black women. That was a political decision at some point to decriminalize this. That was a result of somebody stepping up and saying, no, this is wrong. It's had a disparate impact on the Black community. It doesn't make us less safe to have you in prison. As a matter of fact, it destroys families and communities and creates trauma in the future. That's a political decision. The decision to allow people who've been in prison to vote, that was a political decision. And if voting were not so fundamentally important, white folks wouldn't be trying to keep us from voting so hard. So just that reason alone, there must be something to this if they're working so hard to keep us from doing it.
Listen, I almost forgot I was a moderator. I was just ready to sit back, keep listening because I mean, like, no, really, I mean, people are just in the comments and they're really enjoying this discussion. One of the things that I'm interested in is kind of shifting to talk about just the importance of not only voting but leading. I want to ask kind of what is it that got you guys, if anybody doesn't mind sharing, what is it that got you engaged, and not only just to vote, but to really get into the game? You know, Ife, you talked about knowing how the game is played. One thing to know how the game is played. It's nothing to get into the game. And I asked this question because Jasmine, you brought up and Congresswoman Coleman, you also brought up that Black women really empowered and propelled Joe Biden to the presidency, and have really been the backbone of our civic engagement from its inception. What empowered you guys, or what inspired you guys, or energized you guys to get involved the way that you did, and why is it important, specifically for Black women, to get engaged, to get involved, and to get into leadership?
Are you direct? What?
No, whoever wants to answer, y'all can start off.
Oh, okay. First of all, I think that historically women seek power for reasons different than men do. Like we saw problems that needed to be fixed, and we recognized that we couldn't do it unless we were engaged some way, not always in elective office, but in the system. For me, my first job was working for the Division on Civil Rights, enforcing the law against discrimination. And that's where, I started recognizing all of the inequities, the discrimination that we had to overcome. I never, ever, ever wanted to be an elected official, but my father had been one. And when he died, it was my way of honoring his work and keeping him alive for me. And I realized I could take the experiences that I had working in various programs and departments in state government and use that in the state legislature. I knew government. So I kind of knew how we should be spending our money as a reflection of our values. And my ending up in Congress was, I guess, something that was meant to be, because I certainly wasn't seeking it either. It sought me. But I recognize that that's kind of where I need to be, because it gives me an opportunity to extend some of the work that I have been doing on the state level on the national platform. But we get involved because we see something needs to be fixed, and we recognize that we don't always ask for someone to recognize us. We just want to make things better. We think as mothers, we think as women, we think as sisters, we think as mates to Black men, and we see what happens to them. We're motivated, I believe, out of a desire to do good.
I think so. It's interesting. It's funny. I don't know if I think of myself as a leader per se, but what I will say is I think my motivation in just getting involved in general is I like process. I like to figure out how to, make something better, how to make it flow better. If I move this around, will it give me a better outcome? So in that realm, with what I do with, health policy, again, I just want to see a better outcome. When it comes to translating that to Black women, I want to create a web. I want to, when in my organization, whenever I see another Black woman, I'm like, oh, okay, let me get to know her. Let me link up. And I feel like I do that, and I carry that with me as I go along, because I want to create a web. I want to create a network. I want to encourage other Black women. Even if I'm not meant to be the superstar, sometimes it just takes that representation to kick somebody up to the next level. And so if seeing my face and being present in the field does that for somebody else, I'm more than happy to get to know someone and link them up and encourage them to continue to move up. So I think that's my motivation.
Can I just jump in 1 second before Jasmine? Because you reminded me of something. I'm a co-founder with two other sisters in Congress of the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls. And it was created out of the absence of policy attention given to the intersectionality of our race and our gender. And that is the kind of thing that you're talking about, is like hooking up so that you can do some good in areas that have been traditionally underrepresented or dismissed entirely. And so I'm going to be calling you.
There you go. Black women hooking up. I love to see it.
Yeah, maybe you too, Jasmine.
For me, it was, I literally fell into it. A while ago, a friend, I was a political fundraiser by trade. So I've done everyone from the governor down on to our mayor, to most state reps, to most of the city council people. And I didn't fundraise for a woman until a good girlfriend wanted to run for a state rep. And, you know, she didn't have the party support, or Democratic Party support. And I was kind of like, oh, why? The seat's going to be vacant. You live in the district. You've done the work. You worked in a council office. Why wouldn't they support you? And she was like, girl, they don't support anybody. And I don't know where to go. Like, you work on campaigns. Can you help me? And I remember just being like, yeah, come over to my house. And it was 12 women. They were all getting ready to run for office. And they just asked me to like bring people in and train them. So I did. And it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a program. It wasn't called She Can Win. It was just me helping friends. And out of those 12, 4 of them won, 4 of them ran, 3 of them won. So then the next cycle, because in PA, there's a cycle every 6 months. We love elections in Pennsylvania. More women started coming to me, and I was like, oh, it's not a training program. I just was helping a friend, and it was an overwhelming result. And I just started training women, raising money. And, you know, honestly, I didn't fit in anywhere. Like, the Democratic Party didn't want me at the table because I was advocating for Black women to seek power. That is not a popular phrase. And I didn't fit in. So they didn't want me at their table. I created my own table and I went from there. And, you know, we started in 2014. In 2020, we've trained over 600 women. And by 2023, we're on course to do 1,300 women. And we've put in over $1 million into Black women's campaigns. And even when I think about it, it's like, this so was not supposed to be a thing. It wasn't even supposed to be a thing. But, you know, I will be happy. Someone asked me the other day, like, well, when are you going to stop or turn over the reins? I will be so happy when there is no need for She Can Win. When we have parity in our government, when Black women will take their rightful place, I will gladly hang up this T-shirt and go do something else, play with my babies and my husband.
Listen, it seems like, in from what you guys are saying, that in life, it is almost like there's a call that you don't seek out. It seeks you out. That there's just a need, and that you are just, you know, and if whoever's watching, you know, be sensitive, you know, be sensitive to that call, to that sense of mission. We have a question.
We become the vessel. It's the vessel. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times the vessel isn't looking for it. It just gets filled, you know. It just gets filled. I want to ask, you know, but we're going to take some questions at the end. But I want to kind of throw one more question out here to you guys. How do we ensure, beyond just voting, how do we ensure that some of the things that we have talked about, when it comes to policing, when it comes to inequities in the healthcare system, how do we make sure that some of these fights don't end at the marching place and they don't end at the voting booth, but we make sure that they're seen all the way through into implementation? What is something that those who are watching, like, you know, I was marching in the streets, I was yelling Black Lives Matter, I wore the sign, I carried the sign, you know, I voted for the next president, or I got involved, but how do I make sure that these things don't end here, but we keep the fight going? What are some things that citizens can do to stay in the fight? And I'm going to ask Jasmine to start us off with that.
One thing I always say is it does go past voting. When you find a candidate that you truly believe in, that align with your values, support them. And it goes past just voting for them. Work on their campaign. That's literally how I started. I found someone that I really believed in, and I was like, well, can I help you? Like, what can I do? I'll sign petitions for you, or I'll circulate them for you. And the lady was like, I really need to raise money. And I was like, oh, I know how to ask for money. Let me help you. And I used to spend 2 hours on a Saturday dialing for dollars. And literally that is how I started in politics. So when you find a candidate that aligns with your values, that want to, you know, move the education system forward, or championing healthcare, help them, one, stay in their seat, or help them seek the seat by volunteering on a campaign. That is a very easy, low-touch way to really get involved, stay involved, and making sure that your issues are heard for the right people.
I've been speaking to our fraternity brothers on Zoom, and I've spoken to sororities. And I've also spoken to churches, because I think that those are vehicles to keep people engaged, mobilized, educated, and ready. I don't think that we tend to stay engaged. We get engaged during election seasons. But the issues that we have and the need for the work to be done, and the fact that it's going to take time to get things done, and we don't want anyone to forget what is expected of them, means that our pastors and our civic groups and our fraternities and sororities need to continue to be communicating, discussing, having Zooms, having this, having conversations. And I believe that on a more regular basis, and I've said this, to my pastor, we need to be just telling people what's the issue, what's happening out here, why we need you to be engaged. We need you to write a letter. We need you to make a phone call. We need you to do something. And it's not just every 6 or 8 months. It could be every month that you have a period in your worship service where it's like the news of the day, or stay ready, stay ready, stay ready kind of thing. But we need those who talk to people on a regular basis, that have critical mass, to be really involved in keeping people engaged and motivated and educated, and recognizing, personalizing, this is why this is affecting you, or could affect you, or this is why it's important to you.
Ife?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna build off of that and kind of segue into something else. I think, again, with a public health mentality, when you're looking at a church, that is your community. So when you think about public health, is just whatever community you're involved in at that moment, and what important issues you need to relay or talk about to that community. So I definitely agree, take advantage of those spaces where you have, mass audiences, or you're working with communities, and continue that conversation forward. The other thing that I think is really important, and again, I think it goes back to, if you have the flexibility, if you have the power, even in your workspace. I think something that I heard come up often, again, in my circle with other individuals that I was talking about, is, again, we see how everything that has happened from the pandemic has literally touched every facet of our lives. Again, from school, from work, from just being able to go to the grocery store. In a public health world, you want to take advantage of this opportunity. It sounds bad, but it's like you want to take advantage that these things are in the spotlight and they need to be resolved. Our economy is literally crashing because it's problem on top of problem. And so if you have the ability and you have the power to have these conversations with organizations or corporations that have power, keep capitalizing on having those conversations. Don't stop now. Even, again, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, I deal with Medicare and Medicaid patients, and what's really big in healthcare that hasn't really been there today. Again, behavioral health, mental health, and focusing on health-related social needs. All of those have been exacerbated because of the pandemic, and it shows that when you fix those issues, right? When you fix them, you can, not only are you fixing the social need aspect, but you're also reducing unnecessary utilization and those other kind of issues that spiral in. So again, it's bad, but take advantage of these spotlights and continue the conversation, continue to show that when you fix this, when you address this, you're going to move a whole lot more forward than you think.
And on top of that, we need robust jobs programs. We need robust training programs. So our community needs to communicate it to those who could make a difference and could have a decision on where resources are applied. Because if we fix what you're talking about, then we need to make sure that people have jobs so that they can live a healthy lifestyle. They can live in a healthy environment, and they can raise their families or live their whatever their personal pleasure is, but they can do it and feel like they're contributing. And so we need to make sure that no one forgets what our issues are. And in order for that to happen, we've got to have these conversations back and forth, so that people in Washington, people in the State House, people in the county buildings, and people in the cities recognize that there's a constituency behind these issues and have these expectations. And if we don't see them, then we'll make other decisions as to who should be representing our interests.
And the one thing I wanted to add was we need to normalize voting, right? We need to normalize it. Look at our school system. Why is voting not integrated into the school system? I have a 6-year-old daughter, and she does not go to a public school. And around election time, she comes home with an I voted sticker that her class has designed. And she said, Mom, I voted today. I said, what do you mean you voted today? The election's like 2 days away, kiddo. She said, no, we voted for the class mascot. And we filled out a ballot, and her teacher sent me the pictures. They filled out a ballot. They had 2 candidates. They made speeches, and they voted in a voting booth. In 1st grade, her school is teaching her the act of voting, not who to vote to, but just the act of voting. I want every single child to have that level of engagement. On every level. You shouldn't have to not send your child to a public school to learn about voting. It is unacceptable that we are not normalizing voting in just the sheer act in the right to vote. Our students, our children, they need to know about voting.
I feel like what you guys are calling us to do is to kind of take back the power that we inherently have as citizens. And when I say take back the power, not give up that power by not voting, or not give up that power by not showing up, or I'm going to put this out there. Can someone talk about the importance, and we talked about it a little bit, of civic literacy and of understanding how systems work? Somebody might be saying, I vote, but and I may protest, but I got to know how everything works. Why is it important to know how the system works?
I think that's one of the things that we're missing in public education in particular is civic lessons. What are the various levels of government? How do they impact your life? What level of decisions are being made at what stage? And how does this come about? I think that we've decided for some reason, and I don't know why, that we don't teach that anymore.
Where did civics go? Why are
Right.
Where did that go? When did it come out of the everyday curriculum? Well, I'll tell you what, the elected officials that we've elected has said this is no longer important. We don't need to fund a curriculum around civics. You're absolutely right, Congresswoman. We need to integrate all of those things back in so people can understand the system. I guarantee you, when you go to work, you understand that hierarchy. You need to treat your life the same exact way.
That's so real.
Filter after 6.
Ife, did you hop in there or?
I mean, I was just gonna say it's sad, but I just don't think it was on accident. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it was an accident. And yep, that was all.
That's real. That's right. Well, we're coming towards the end. For those who are watching, if you have any questions, we want to see if we can take a couple of questions from those in the comments section. So please get your questions in now as we begin to take some questions from our viewers. Here's our first question, and it was asked, and I think it's a good one. And I mean, we can talk about this. We have about 10 minutes left, but I think this is a good one. In this big country, how do you guys view compromising versus fighting for everything you believe in? How do you weigh compromise versus fighting for every single thing that you believe in. I'm going to ask if Congresswoman Coleman can start us off with that one.
Yeah, so like you've never seen a perfect piece of legislation, because a perfect idea comes to bear, and then you've got to negotiate people to support it, and so they want their bent on it. So you don't compromise your values. Your values should be fundamental to your to who you are and what you're doing. You can compromise on pathways. You can compromise on time frames, but you have to recognize that that's life is a give and take on whether or not you're in your own job situation or if you're in a government situation. But particularly in a government situation, you got to figure out, how do you maintain the critical value of what you're doing and get enough votes so that you could pass that piece of legislation and move it to the next level or the next house so it can get on to the person who's going to sign it into law. Compromising doesn't have to be a negative thing. Compromising is just, sharing information and going back and forth with what you think is important and what you think is important and how you arrive at it.
Jasmine?
I need to learn the answer to this myself. I'm still learning how to pick my battles, but the one thing that I use is a North Star guidance of, am I now fighting this for my people and my constituents and those that have put me in the position to speak for them? Or is it more ego? I don't want to lose this battle. And I think when I ask myself those questions, I learn where to use my voice, where to spend my energy. Some things that I am passionate about, I do have to let go every now and again, because it's not in the best interest of the group that I represent and my constituents. Even though I'm not an elected official, I do have constituents, that people that have invested their time, energy, and resources into me to put me in the position that I am. So yeah, I'm still working on how not to fight every battle, but I normally ask myself, Jazz, is this more about you not wanting to lose and being competitive, or is this truly what is best for my community?
No, that's real.
Because I'm like super competitive and I hate to lose.
I am also competitive. No, again, so a little different for me as well. I don't have constituents, but I think, again, when I'm fighting battles, it's like, okay, what is going to be the outcome? What is going to be the ultimate outcome of going for this? Am I going to have to compromise my values, or is this going to benefit more than just me in this moment, or should I wait for a different opportunity to go about? So I think, again, I think I'm kind of in line with what everybody else said in that regards. Still something I'm working on. I think I'm a little bit more quieter in my battles. So it's kind of all I have to say on that topic.
I think that was an important question, because it seems like, especially in the culture that we live in now, a lot of people are like, if I can't get 100% of the policy that I want, or if there's going to be any sort of compromise, then it's corrupted and I want nothing to do with it. And it seems as if that creates this stalemate to actual progress.
Well, what we've experienced in the last 4 years makes you very suspect, and it makes you really unwilling to trust. So it is true that people who are the president-elect and vice president-elect, they're going to have to earn trust again. And they know that. And so, I'm glad it is them.
Yeah. Ife, was you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think just from stepping back from this platform, just as a civilian, I really when I thought about the question, it really made me think of this current election. And I think the options were, do you vote for one, do you vote for two, or do you not vote at all? And the argument was, well, if I vote for the one person, I'm not going to get this. If I vote for the other person, they're not this either. And I think, again, in my opinion, this is exactly what we just experienced. It's like, well, you're not going to get everything with the one person. There's a lot more stuff you're not going to get with the other person, but but not voting is like the worst option you could do. So it's like you really have to rationalize with yourself, okay, you need to lean in a direction where at least you can move the ball a little bit. It may not be, again, everything that you want from this option, but at least you're moving the ball a little bit. And I think a little bit is better than nothing at all, or even taking us back, I mean, another 10, 30, 50 decades.
You want to know what else? And maybe you ladies can, and Pastor, you guys can help me with it. When people say, we want this administration to do right by Black people, and I'll say, well, what do you mean? And they don't know what they mean. Like, what does doing right by Black people mean? So I think, like, at your core, you have to know what you want to get out of the movement, right? Because all I hear is, nope, we hold him accountable. He has to be good to Black people. Okay, yes, let's hold him accountable. He has to be good to Black people. What does that mean for you? Oh, just, be good to Black people, invest in Black people, build up businesses. I think that when you have in your head what you want to see from a movement, that's when you can make educated decisions. Sit down, do the research first before you start tearing down the system or saying the ball hasn't moved fast enough or further enough for me. Because have you done your research to see where you started? And then how the ball has moved over time. I always say, educate yourself before you can go into a battle, right? You don't want to ever be asked a question and say, oh, gosh, I don't know. That happened to me one good time. I had a lifetime chance meeting with someone extremely important, and they asked me a question. I was like, oh, I never really thought about that. They were like, well, how are you even here and you haven't thought about that? I urge every single person, you never know when the opportunity is going to come to you where you have the chance to talk to a decision maker. Do your research and know what you want to get out of the movement.
Yeah. So Jasmine, but you could have said, well, I've never really made that a particular point for me, but here's something that I really am concerned about that I'd like to explore with you and put it back on them.
Congresswoman, I needed you in my corner back then. You wasn't around. I missed my shot. I'm out here struggling.
Wow. Listen, this has just been an awesome conversation. And we're coming up on an hour now. If we could, I'm going to ask each of you to probably take a minute or so, and just to share somebody's watching and they really enjoyed this conversation. They've been inspired, they've been energized, and they kind of want to know, all right, what can I do tomorrow? What's I understand generally like what I can, but what is something that I can do practically tomorrow? I'm going to start off with Jasmine, then I'm going to go to Ife, and then I'm going to go to
I was still thinking of my answer.
I got an answer. Let me just say, this is what you can do tomorrow.
Well, you know what? I'm going to start with you. You go ahead.
Yeah, this is what you can do tomorrow, because we're going to talk about the sense of urgency right here. You can commit to making calls into Georgia to young people to get them to vote in the January 5th runoff, where you have a Black man and a not Black man, but both Democrats running against two corrupt Republican incumbents. And if you want to see Kamala Harris be in the Senate shutting down Mitch McConnell, then we need to get these two Senate seats done. And you can be helpful even though you are virtual. You can call the Democratic National Committee. You can call the Warnock campaign, and you can ask them, I want to help. You can make calls. And that is something you can do that'll have an immediate and urgent and necessary impact. I'm sorry. I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe you asked me that. I know what you can do right now.
That is all right. That is all right.
Yes, come with that energy. Keep that energy. Can I just say ditto? Like, yes, get involved, make calls. I would say figure out when your next election is, right? Figure out what the upcoming election is in your state, city, town, municipal, and figure out who's running. Do some research and then go and talk to the campaigns. Figure out what candidate you want to support next. But I cannot stress enough educating yourself first. So get on your computer, go to Google and say, when is my next election? And figure out what each of those offices do.
Amen.
Okay.
That's not fair. You took mine.
See, my melt. I can see it.
No, I totally agree with educate yourself. Again, and I get it. Some of this can be overwhelming. So I look at it from that perspective. Hey, where do I even start? I mean, this is a lot of information coming in at one time. One thing I would say is if you have a complaint, if there's something that you don't like the way it's running, you don't want to see maybe your kid's future go in this direction, do research, find one thing that you're really passionate about, get educated on, and move forward in that direction. I think that's the one thing that I would say that you can do immediately. Education is at your fingertips, so Google and educate yourself.
Since we're Googling, Google Ralph Warnock. He is a candidate we need to make sure is in the Senate.
Yes,
he and his running mate.
And he's a pastor.
Right, and it's not about Democrat, Republican. It's about right, wrong.
Yes, ma'am. Right, wrong.
Yeah.
Listen, wow, I'm just overwhelmed by this discussion. Is there anything any of you all want to say before we end this discussion? Any last statements? Any last charges you want to give to those who are viewing?
Well, Pastor, I want to thank you for having us. These conversations are so important and so vital, especially as Black women, as a Black community. So first and foremost, thank you. The only thing that I'll say is that I always say, vote often, vote early, vote like your life depends on it. But most importantly, vote like a Black woman.
Amen. Amen.
I'll say, well, thank you for having us. I think I'm just proud to be on the same platform with these two lovely women. I think with that, my advice is hook up with people who are really in the know, get involved, get connected, network, be friends with, powerful Black women. Again, even if you don't know as much as everybody else, getting linked up and making those connections will change your life. So that would be my advice.
So I want to thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor, for inviting me. And I certainly enjoyed my time with these awesome women here. They're amazing and brilliant and very relevant. And I would say that the advice that they've given you is the advice that I think will be valuable to you to get engaged, to get connected, to be educated, but to do not forget how powerful you as an individual are. You have power. Let no one take it from you.
Well, listen, amen. That is a mic drop. I want to thank you all for the information and the knowledge you all shared tonight. Listen, this is not maybe next year we'll have an in-person panel so everybody can give you all this a round of applause. But those who are watching online, I know that those in the comments, I know they enjoyed this discussion. So on behalf of the Mount Sinai community, we thank you all for lending your voice, your expertise, and your knowledge tonight. Amen. Let's thank them, everyone. Well, everybody, that will conclude our session for tonight. Listen, I'm empowered, I'm inspired, I'm invigorated, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to hit the streets. I'm waiting for the next election, y'all. Let's do this. Let's make sure that we are doing the work of Jesus, which is the work of setting captives free, transforming people's lives, speaking up for those who cannot speak up for themselves, and defending the oppressed. That is what we are called to do, and that's what we are excited. That's where we go from here. Let's pray as we close. Our Father, our God, we thank you for this time together. Father, I thank you for these powerful, awesome women that have poured into us tonight. Lord, we ask that we would not take this just as information, but let it be a transformational experience where we will get up tomorrow and be ready to be the hands and feet of Jesus, making life better for people. That's what you did, and that's the legacy that we want to walk in. We thank you. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.